All right, here we go. It is episode 50. That's right. You heard it right. Episode 50 of Red versus Blue. My name is Mike Stark.
And I'm Keith Curry.
We made it to 50, Keith.
We did. We covered a lot of history and a lot of developments and a lot of politics in the course of the last year and a half.
We sure did. And if you go back and listen, you'll see how close we hit it most of the time. So
we were right on a lot of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's talk about the things that have gone on since our last show. The main thing, I guess, is I guess we can term it the Republican Civil War.
Well, here's the thing. If you've got a party that's based on your media presence, based on being the most extreme you can, and so every faction is trying to out-extreme the other. So, for example, Elon and Vivek say that if you don't vote for the budget cuts, or if you do vote for the budget that was negotiated by Johnson, you're a rhino. And then Trump says, if you don't vote for raising the spending limit like I want, you're a rhino. And then the Republicans in Congress says, if you do vote for it, you're a rhino. And then Bannon and Loomer, Bannon called for Johnson to be dumped, and Loomer and Bannon both came out against the H-1B visas, which Elon and Vivek are both big supporters of. And in fact, Trump himself is used frequently. Trump actually has an application in not for the HB1 visas, but for the H-2B visas, which are for farm workers, for about 13 people to work on his winery in Virginia. So he's a big advocate for them. And so that sort of gave a split of Republicans on immigration, on the value of immigrants from foreign countries, of business versus the base. And Trump was right smack in the middle of it, trying to keep peace among his various factions. And everybody else have set up this deal where if you show any kind of compromise, any kind of moderation whatsoever, you're a rhino and you deserve to be thrown out of the tribe. And they found themselves conflicting. The House Republicans, some of them, 36 of them, found themselves in conflict with Trump. And it just showed you how incoherent and incohesive the Republican Party is right now. You know, you can be a chaos agent if you're out of power. You can't be a chaos agent and govern. And that is the biggest challenge facing my Republican friends right now.
Is this a surprise to you? It kind of is a surprise to me when like you said, they have the power, they have all of the balls, it's all in their court, and yet they're fighting amongst themselves in weird sort of ways.
Very weird, and none of them, by the way, in the service of the country. And what they're about to discover is that this newfound Republican coalition that includes working people and minorities and older people and people in unions, they like government spending. They like Social Security and Medicare. They like infrastructure that gets fixed. And in many cases, they are either government employees themselves or dependent upon government services. And so they're going to have some serious conflicts when it comes to cutting the budget, trying to cut the national debt, and trying to expand that coalition. Because people, count their pennies these days, and they know what the impacts are going to be. They know how tariffs can impact prices, and the results are not going to be favorable for the Republicans if they screw it up.
Yeah, and that's one of the big things he ran on was lowering the prices of everything, and it doesn't look like it's headed in that direction. That will tick off the middle class and the working people, I think, if the prices don't go down or at least stabilize a little bit. And the stock market is horrible right now, and I think he's going to get the blame for that at some point, and the rich folks are not going to be happy about that. So it's going to be an interesting 4 years.
Very difficult coalition to hold together because, the group in Congress want to cut spending and cut the national debt or not pay the national debt, which really would precipitate a financial crisis in the United States. And those programs are of vital importance to a lot of people who are now part of the Trump base. And it's going to require political skills, some of which have yet to be demonstrated by this group, in order to keep that coalition alive.
And then as of this taping, they're working on getting a new speaker. And I guess Mike Johnson has retained his speakership. And so they're off and running in that respect, right?
They are. It was nip and tuck. They held the vote open for about 45 minutes or an hour or so for him to make a deal with two of the Republicans. Ultimately, three Republicans voted for candidates not named Mike Johnson. A total of 9 actually didn't vote, but they eventually came on and added their name to Johnson. But there were three at the end. He made a deal with Norman and Self to vote for him. He did not make a deal with Massey, and Massey continued not to vote for him. And he won the speakership with 2 votes to spare. And again, what they were asking for was totally unreasonable things. With some thought that they would make Chip Roy the chairman of the Rules Committee. The Rules Committee is where you can bottle up all legislation. It's where committee assignments get made. It's where legislation can be sent to die or disappear. So having him in that position would have been a real disaster for Johnson, for the Republican leadership. So he's a speaker yet again. And it was less of a fight than it was with McCarthy because he's a more well-liked person.
Sure.
But it still shows some very deep divisions and a very hardcore faction of the Republican caucus who fundamentally does not want to lead. And that's the problem for the party.
Yeah, and we don't know what those deals were that he made to get those votes either, right? Those could come back to bite everybody again.
They could. Now, he was smart enough to now it takes 9 votes to vacate the chair as opposed to 1 vote. That was the deal McCarthy cut. He claims he did not make any deals behind the scenes. And the people who were on the other side of it have come out and said, well, what we wanted was access. And we wanted to be consulted and we wanted to have a seat at the table when the big bill comes in. And he promised us that. So that's one of those easy promises to make that probably means very little.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I have an increased respect for his political skills to keep all this together. And it should be noted that Donald Trump did get involved at the end and made calls to all 3 of them and turned 2 of them. The one thing that Donald Trump is very cognizant of is how this reflects back on him if the Republicans become the gang that couldn't shoot straight.
Right.
And he wants to avoid that at all costs and did get involved to support Johnson. It's not every day that I say that Donald Trump was the adult in the room, but at least he had some skin in the game here and exercised some leadership to get this behind us.
Well, he showed himself to know a little bit about politics for a change, right?
For a change, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, and then the other big story is the passing of Jimmy Carter, the only president I ever got to shake hands with.
Well, I got to shake hands with him, too. I met him both in Long Beach. And I met him when he was at the Reagan Library. He was at the time the only living Democratic president during the dedication of the Reagan Library. He had a remarkable career of almost 50 years after he left office. He did a tremendous amount of good. He was a true definition of a good Christian, I think. And his reputation grew with him after he left office. He was president during a very difficult time. As he learned the same lesson Joe Biden learned. That is, it's the economy, stupid. He had very high inflation. Very difficult international situation, but he distinguished himself in his post-presidency.
It can easily be said he was not a great president, but he was a great human being and somebody that, I mean, like you said, the last 50 years since he left office, he's highly respected, even by Republicans. So he's going to be missed. And of course, President Trump is not happy about him dying right now.
You're going to rain on Trump's parade, and that is the unforgivable sin. And I understand he's objecting to flags being at half staff, but that's the kind of pettiness we've come to expect from Donald Trump. I do have one other Jimmy Carter story, though. I was in Washington, D.C. on the night of the hostage rescue, and I was across the river in Virginia. I think it was at campaign school, and came into town with a friend and had dinner, and we were driving back across the river and we saw all these cars. You know, that's when Pennsylvania Avenue was open and you could turn in the gate in the North Portico. And a lot of, limos and cars coming into the White House that night. And we go, something's got to be going on. Right. And the next day we got up and read about the failed hostage rescue. And it was a real low point for President Carter.
Absolutely a low point. All right. One other little bit of details, and I wasn't going to talk about it, but then you sort of straightened me out as to why it's important. Some vote counts are now in, right? That have some statistical interest.
Well, Mike, politics is a lot like baseball. It's the statistics that matter. So there were 147,561,953 votes cast for the House of Representatives. The Republican majority in the 3 districts that gave them the majority, closest districts, 7,309 votes. 799 votes in Iowa 1, 2448 in Colorado 8, 4,062 in Pennsylvania 7. That 7,000 votes out of 147 million made the difference in who controlled the House. It's interesting to note that that is not the closest margin. It was 6,670 votes in 2022 when the Republicans took over. And back in 2000, it was only 6,495. So very few votes in a very limited number of districts make a huge difference in terms of who controls the House, who controls the committee assignments, and who controls the investigation committees. Interesting to note, Republicans won 3 districts carried by Harris. Democrats won 13 districts carried by Trump. So that gives the Republicans some hope for the future, perhaps. And the Democratic margins in their 3 closest races were, in fact, much closer. 187 votes, 653 votes, and 2,382 votes. So a small movement in a few places could have made a very big difference in the House.
And something we have been stressing throughout this whole show that we do is the importance of voting. And this is an example of that. These stats are an absolute example of how important it is to go out and vote at every opportunity you are given to make a difference. And you could make a difference with these margins so tight. So,
absolutely. We had an election for the city council in the city of Galt, Northern California, decided by picking straws because candidates tied.
Wow.
So it's critically important. And as you see how close it is, and it's been close for a while nationally,
yes,
it's critically important every year to vote.
So with that, I think we'll call it a show, and we're going to continue. There's still stuff going on.
A lot of drama.
So as long as there's stuff going on, we're going to continue, and we appreciate you following us. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to us, leave us a comment, leave us a 5-star review, and we will see you next time on Red versus Blue.
Bye, everybody. Happy New Year.